same illnesses, they start to manifest differently. And then also, I mean, we always want to sort of involve more than the patient in medicine, right? Like we're all social creatures, we have other people involved, but especially as people get older, it becomes more and more important to think about who is in that care circle around them. So I like to say that geriatrics is the art and science of modifying healthcare so that it works better for older adults. And what I think is a little more challenging about geriatrics is that with children and pediatrics, they start off extremely different than their adult self, right?
Yeah.
And it's very clear. Although for a long time, you know, doctors were like, oh, I can take care of children, you know, they're just small people. And it took a while for the medical field to realize that there's a whole related but different knowledge base. So likewise, as people get older, they need healthcare that's properly adapted to their changing minds and bodies. And that starts off with relatively small adaptations, even when people are in their 50s and 60s. And then more so as they get older, not just as chronological age, but also, you know, in terms of just, you've maybe talked about this on your show, but people age differently in their bodies, right?
Yeah.
You know, and there's actually really interesting science about how they can now do these scientific studies where they can see your like biological age. And it's not just the kooky stuff that's, you know, on billboards, but there's like real science in it. And that in a way makes it more challenging. So that's geriatrics, the art and science of modifying healthcare so it works better for older people. Now, people often conflate it with gerontology. And will refer to medical doctors who are specialized in geriatrics as gerontologists. But the difference is that gerontology is a social studies discipline. It's the social science of all things aging. So gerontologists, people can get a master's, people can get a PhD. Gerontologists know lots of things about aging adults, very important things, you know, beyond healthcare and medicine. But a gerontologist, strictly speaking, does not have a medical degree. And is not a doctor. Whereas a geriatrician does have a medical degree, is a doctor. And in a way, we're much more similarly trained as geriatricians. We all had to go to medical school, do a residency in internal medicine, family medicine, and then additional special training. Whereas gerontologists are it's more like public health, which I also have a degree in, which can be very, very varied. So to go back to your question of why I got into this, when I start off,
excuse me, let me stop. We just had some late followers, so I just want to introduce you again. This is Dr. Leslie Kernisan, and she has a website called betterhealthwhileaging.net. And we're talking to her about, well, I loved this, Dr. Leslie. Can I call you Dr. Leslie?
Yes, that's fine.
I love this when it said on your website, you believe that it shouldn't be so hard for older adults and their families to navigate late life challenges. I love that statement because that's what we are all about, is trying to tell these women, we do deal with just women, and we try to tell them how this aging process does not have to be as hard as they make it. Go ahead and, you know, how did you get into this and why? How did you get into this topic?
Yeah, well, going into medical school, I was always interested in primary care and kind of the care and well-being of the whole person, and that we want help with our health so we can live our best lives. And then also if we're sick or unwell, we want assistance with that, right? So that we can either get past it or find a way to adapt so we can still live the best life possible despite whatever is happening with our health. And I was also interested in why so much of healthcare did not seem to support that. It's a fairly dysfunctional system. And once I got into primary care, the most interesting part of it was older adults and geriatrics. I mean, that to me felt like the rocket science of it, where people were more likely, people can have health problems at any time in their life, but part of aging, and we don't want to define aging as this, but it is, you know, one of the challenges that come up as people get older is that at some point their health will change or they'll have health crises, you know. So older adults were more likely to have either new health crises or ongoing chronic conditions. And I just felt like that's where there was really the opportunity to make a huge difference
Oh,
in supporting people. And also like all the great themes of human life, I think come up at that time, relationships and legacy and overcoming challenges. And so I just felt like it was really rich and interesting. Now, a lot of doctors don't like it because it's messy, because often we can't fix people,
yeah, right.
entirely. And usually we can't turn back the clock and make them the way they were 20 years before. But I thought it was just very rich and interesting, and also really gratifying to work with families. And I think, ideally all through our life, we're interdependent, right? And
Right.
interacting with others, but that is so especially important later in life,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
So
I am so intrigued, and I think it's so exciting, doctor, that at a young age you could see this, that you could actually get excited about this and see that this was a really important thing, because I think a lot of young people, they just can't relate to it. So I think that is very, very exciting that you were able to do that. So you do where I know that you have, well, we gave your website, you have podcasts, and you're also on YouTube. But I think, today we kind of wanted to talk about, there's so many things that we could talk about. Oh my gosh, because we are aging. I mean, I'm 83. But my dad lived to be 105,
oh my gosh,
and
that is
he was,
exceptional.
I know, and he was very healthy, by the way, and
Oh,
didn't eat
oh.
right and didn't do anything right, but he was just for some reason very healthy. And didn't think he was going to die at 105. So anyway, but that early, I haven't experienced this in my family, but that early memory loss, I have talked to a lot of women lately that are, that's getting, that's happening. What
Hmm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Um, when you first start seeing the signs of memory loss, I mean, what do we do?
Yeah. Yeah. So really briefly, one of the reasons why I have the website Better Health While Aging is because many years ago in 2008, I was in graduate school to make healthcare better for older adults. And I was studying something, and somebody came to me and said, "Oh, you're a geriatrician. We have a new website for boomers worried about aging parents, and we're looking for doctors to answer questions." And I looked and I thought, oh my God, people have questions. And of course, they go to Google, and what do
Yep.
they find? And nothing they find is written by a geriatrician. And so what if we
Yeah,
shared that? Because people often don't get the ideal information from doctors who are not trained in geriatrics.
exactly.
And those doctors are well-intentioned. They
Mhm.
just have not had the specific training. They may not have had the specific interest. They're often in very pressured times. So yes, starting to have some memory problems, or feeling like one might, is one of those things where often when people mention it to their doctor, it's kind of waved off as, what do you expect? You're getting older. Um, and they're not given the evaluation that they should. So I do have an article on Better Health While Aging about cognitive impairment, 10 common causes and 10 things the doctor should check. And then I know I have had a particular soft spot for people helping their aging parents for the past several years. And Better Health While Aging was originally called Geriatrics for Caregivers, except all these older adults came who were very interested in their own health and said, "Why are you talking about us?" And I said, "Okay, it's true. When I'm in practice, I work with both, right?
Yeah,
The older
yeah,
person and their family. So let me do that online." What I was
okay.
going to say, I have a book that came out in 2021, When Your Aging Parent Needs
Oh,
Help.
that's great. Okay.
And that was specifically for people who start to feel like, is there something wrong with my parents' memory, or they're not doing well at home? What do I do about that? So I mentioned this because with the book, I made all these downloadable cheat sheets, including one for checking for cognitive symptoms. So what I tell people if they're concerned, and I say this more to, again, families, but one could apply it to oneself is that, first of all, I've created a list of common symptoms to check for. It's just, if you really are slipping mentally, it's harder to check yourself for it, although you could ask somebody you trust, have you noticed these things? And that's to kind of get kind of specific on what are we seeing or not seeing, because otherwise it's this vague word,
Right.
right? So I
Yeah.
list like
Yeah.
all the specific things that I would check for, which then could be reported to the doctor when you go see them, because if you do your homework ahead of time, you're more likely to get the care you need from the doctors. And then there's also the list of what the doctors are supposed to check, because there are many health-related conditions that can affect an older person's thinking. It could be a medication, and there's an article on Better Health While Aging about 4 types of medication that slow your brain function.
Oh, really? That's in your book?
That might be in the book, but it's definitely on the website.
Okay, on the website. Okay, Better Health While Aging.
Yeah.
Okay.
So every
That is
now and
so
then
important.
somebody writes to me and is like, I got off those medications. I asked my doctor to take me off it, and my thinking is so much better. Thank you. And I'm like, well, exactly, right? So in that list of 10 things, and that list of 10 things the doctor should check is in the cheat sheet for the book too.
Okay.
We ideally, the person who's worried about their memory would first of all get an objective evaluation. Are you having these symptoms? Maybe checked in the office, like a short type of test of memory and thinking. And then we should look for medical things that can make thinking worse. So medications, certain types of blood electrolyte changes could do it. I have a list there of, usually what doctors are supposed to check for. Depression, can do it.
Okay.
And what's tricky about older people is that often, and having memory or thinking problems is something that we call a geriatric syndrome. So it's a kind of symptom or problem that we see, especially in older adults. And in older adults, it's often due to lots of things at the same time. So other geriatric syndromes are things like falls, incontinence, urinary incontinence. Because if I at age 46 start falling often, there's probably something very specific that is wrong, right? I have a new neurological disease or, or a blood pressure problem. But in older people, it's usually several things at the same time. And so it takes thinking about it a little bit differently. So memory and thinking problems fall into that. Sometimes we find a single smoking gun, but often there are a few things that might be causing it or making it worse. And then we try to reverse what we can. And help the person think the best that they can, because that makes a huge difference to quality of life. So aging, should not be about your health problems, but at the same time, one of the big reasons why people develop age-related life challenges is that they develop underlying changes to their health and abilities. And those need to, first of all, be noticed by doctors and evaluated to see if we can treat them or modify them. And some of them cannot be entirely fixed. And then we need to think about modifications and adaptations. We don't want to just leave people and be like, well, what do you expect? You're old and now you have this problem. It's, so can we provide a little extra support around mobility, around this, around that, so that you can still be an active participant as much as possible?
Do the one thing that everybody says is getting older, from, I think, I used to say 50 and more, but now I say more 60. They say that 50-year-old is like a 35-year-old. And I really am beginning to think maybe they are, because they just seem so much younger, but maybe it's just because I'm so much older. But anyway, the one thing that we always say as we're getting older is, I'm forgetting names, I forget names of people and everything. Isn't that just kind of a normal thing, or can that be considered starting memory loss? Or, forgetting names.
It's normal as people get older. So there is an article on Better Health While Aging, like 6 ways that memory and thinking change as people get older, like normal ways. So
Mhm.
it is normal as people get older for things to be a little slower and for it to take longer
Mhm.
to call up a name or something like that. So that's normal. So that, or the word on the tip of your tongue and you can't quite get it back,
Right.
that's very normal. So if it's just a little bit of trouble remembering a name or a word and nothing else, it's probably just, normal aging. But this is again why I think it can be helpful to look at the list of other
Yes.
things to check for, because so first of all, I have found that a lot of people think it's normal aging for people to develop a poor short-term memory, like not remember what they did yesterday or not remember that they already told you something. It is not normal.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't think so.
Um,
Yeah.
but some people think it is normal. So it's not normal to start repeating the same question over
Mm.
and over again. Although there we want to make sure, well, is it a hearing issue? Lots of
Right,
people, as they get into
right.
their 60s, 70s, and 80s, are developing a hearing. So is it that they didn't understand, or they didn't remember, or is it that they are having difficulty hearing?
Mhm.
So yeah, so we want to look for other things. Now, the nature, people have a huge fear of developing something like Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, right? A kind of more permanent,
Yeah, very
slowly
much so.
progressive
Mhm.
form of problems with memory and thinking, because almost everybody knows somebody who had that happen.
Right.
And, it's sad and scary
Yeah, very scary.
to see. And people with those conditions can still live very rich, fulfilling lives, but
Mhm.
at the same time, it's certainly a challenge.
Mhm.
And it's normal for us to look at that and think that doesn't happen to me. So the nature of those conditions is that the brain is changing slowly over 15 years before any symptoms are obvious. That is the nature
Oh,
of those
wow.
conditions. Yes, it's called, they've developed now, especially in research facilities, the ability to do special tests to detect the first signs of conditions like Alzheimer's and the such, years before the symptoms become obvious. So by the time the symptoms become obvious, a fair amount of damage has been done to the brain,
Oh,
and it's
okay.
too late to reverse that.
Mhm.
So the challenge is that the nature of these conditions is that they're very slowly coming on. And so there's, for many people, going to be this ambiguous stage where they're maybe having a little bit of trouble, and it could be normal aging, or it could be the first obvious signs of something else.
Mhm.
And so there are these new medications now for Alzheimer's. One of them was just in the news. I mean, there was the one that was FDA approved a year or two ago, Aduhelm, to
Mhm.
stop the progression of amyloid, which is associated with Alzheimer's. And for that one, they think that, really, if you get people before they're having obvious symptoms. But it wasn't clear that it worked super well, and it was very
Right.
expensive, and people had very severe side effects. And so in the end, the FDA approved it. It was very controversial. And then Medicare said, well, we're not going to pay unless you're in a study. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so that
Well,
medication hasn't taken off. But that's an example of this sort of issue of there are going to be some people who are older who are starting to wonder if they're having a change, who have had something happening in their brain already for over 10 years, and it's starting to emerge. But for
yeah.
us in the real world setting, both the older person and their family and their regular doctors, we don't have that x-ray vision to like
Mhm.
look in and
Yeah.
see what it is. You have to just, again, look and see for things that you can detect and change, medications,
Yeah.
certain kinds of health conditions, try reversing those, and then usually give it some time. So the researchers are optimistic that eventually we'll find something that works well. And if you give it to people really early, we'll be able to really deflect the
Why wouldn't
disease.
that be nice? Oh, okay,
I
I have a
think I think
very
it might come up. We're not quite there yet, but we're all
yeah,
very
I
hopeful, of
have a
course.
very good friend that went to a memory center and was given a test or something and said they said that she had mild cognitive MCI, whatever that
Yeah,
is.
mild cognitive impairment.
Yeah, and but it was like a one-page test. Is that something to really get concerned about or? Oh,
So mild cognitive impairment means that when we test objectively, there is some signs that some aspect of the person's memory or thinking is worse than expected for their age and education level, but it can't be bad enough to interfere with independence in daily life activities.
mm-hmm.
So that's it. And it could be caused by a variety of things. I mean, it could, people, women famously, this is not my area of expertise, but, menopause, right? All the hormonal shifts and
Right.
all that.
Yeah.
Lots of women
Well, you're
feel
getting
like their
close to that, my
memory and
dear.
thinking, I know.
Go ahead.
That'll be me.
Yeah.
So you could potentially have mild cognitive impairment and have
Yeah.
it be related to,
Yeah.
underlying menopausal things. But a certain number of people who have mild cognitive impairment are in that transitional stage where they have something happening to their brain progressively, and they're in that, it's a little bit like the dawn and dusk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're in
Mhm.
that intermediate stage. The difference is we don't know whether they're going to keep progressing,
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good.
because some people keep progressing and some people stay stable and like that for a very long time, and some people get better. And again, it partly comes down to what was the underlying thing going on in their brain or body that was causing
Mm-hmm.
um I mean, sometimes we find that people have been abusing a medication or substance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's all
Yeah.
kinds of things that
Like doctor, like this. Not good.
well, one of those is good for your spirit and health, but if you're
I
drinking
know.
several of them every day and first thing in the morning, then
Oh yeah.
yes,
No, 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 no. I just do it on Friday afternoons, but
just
it's
Friday
still,
afternoon. I'm envious. I think I
yeah.
told you it's 2 hours earlier here in San
uh,
Francisco. It's too early for
I
a
know, too
martini.
early to start drinking.
I know.
But I every time I do it, I just think, oh my gosh, I know that's not good. But I think I am so happy that we know about you, because now you also have online courses, it said. Uh,
Yes. So the
that tell me
courses
a little
right
bit
now,
about that.
yeah. So the courses right now are especially for people who are helping an older parent.
Mhm.
And I have one especially on helping a parent who has developed memory loss, because that's a big adjustment for the older person and for the family. And probably the thing that makes the biggest difference in that older person with memory losses health and experience is their family developing the skills to communicate with them more effectively and help them adapt to needed safety changes.
Mhm.
That's like hugely important. So that's the main program that right now I have available. I also have another ongoing program for people who are helping an aging parent, where I work with geriatric care managers and we just help them with whatever's coming up, because once people come on that journey, so I feel like that, those are like two journeys of age-related challenges that come up for people.
Mhm.
One is starting to help an older person you care about, often a parent or other older relative. For some people,
Mhm.
the first time that happens, it's their spouse.
Mhm.
Some people have been helping a parent since they were relatively young, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there are people
Mhm.
who've been doing it since even their teens and 20s, who had a parent who was chronically ill or had mental illness or something like that, who had to step into that role. So that might be people's first exposure to a lot of navigating age-related health challenges, is when they're helping
Mhm.
their parent through it. And then, people go through it for themselves
Mhm.
at some
And
point.
they will find these courses on your website.
Yeah, there's a little tab that says
All that
courses,
stuff. Yeah.
and
Yeah. And your Facebook
yeah.
page. I mean, that was great. I went
Oh
on your
yeah.
Facebook page.
We post like the articles that we're sharing, but I'm actually going to be doing, for people who are interested in resources for helping their older parents, betterhealthwhileaging.net/helping older parents. That usually has the latest things that we're doing. And I am going to be doing a live workshop later in October about keeping
That's
parents
good.
with memory loss safe. Now, what I would like to do is, for quite a while, also the older adults in my audience have asked for things to help them prepare for their own aging or, navigate certain age-related conditions. And I just haven't had the bandwidth to do it, but I'm hoping at some point to do, they might be one-day workshops or something like that on
Mhm.
a particular topic like falls or getting your medications reviewed
Mhm.
or, things
Well,
that I
keep
think
us
can be
posted, would you? I
valuable.
mean,
Yeah.
because that you just sounds like you're doing some really great things. I have to end with a story about my dad.
Yeah.
He was, I think, when he was late 90s. I said to him, and of course, he's been gone for a while. So I was, instead of 83, I was probably, like 75 or something. And I'm like, Daddy, I'm having a hard time when I go to the grocery store because I can't remember sometimes, what I need to get. And I forget to write it down and everything. And he says, I know what you mean. He says, I go to the grocery store and I can only remember 5 things out of 7 that I needed. And I'm like, 5 things?
He was exceptional.
I can
So
remember like 3. Yeah, he was. He was just like, and I don't know whether it was genetics. I don't know. I talked to this interviewed this one man that worked with women or people living to be 100, and he said that they found out that only 30% is genetics and probably less than that. So I don't know what it was, but this man was the older I get, I mean, he's been gone for a while. He skydived with me when he was 91.
oh
But
my goodness.
older I get, the more in awe I am of that. So I just, it's the aging thing. We just have to help people get through it, Dr. Leslie.
Yeah. So
We
if you don't mind my asking, like, what was the last 6 months of his life like?
Well, I have to tell you, it's not a good story because he got married at 94 and he
Oh,
married someone that was not a nice person.
oh,
And I think it kind of took him down. Honestly, and they were married, I mean, like almost 10 years, and he was happy for, I think, the first 5. After that, she got really just awful. But, when honestly, 2 weeks before he died, he started having little mini strokes. He's healthy, clear up until then. In fact, he took a B12 shot every month for like 70 or 80 years. He took all of it. I said, Daddy, why are you taking a B12 shot? He said, I don't know. They just told me to. So 2 weeks before he died, had to go into the nursing home, and he went by the clinic to get his B12 shot. But I go down there because I'm in Minnesota, he's in Kansas, and I'm sitting there with him, and he just looked at me and he said, Jean, I just didn't think this was going to happen to me. And I said, Daddy, you're 105. He said, I know, but I just didn't think it would happen. I know this man thought he would live to be 110 or something. And you know what? If it hadn't been for her and that horrible, don't ever get married when you're 94, Dr. Leslie.
okay. I'll keep that
But
in
it's,
mind.
I think that really took him down. I really honestly think he would have lived a few more years. And it was so much of the mental, he was so positive. He's such a positive person.
Oh, yeah. Well, that can be a wonderful
Yeah.
strength. Well, it sounds like he almost pulled off a Queen Elizabeth, right?
Yeah.
Doing quite well until
Yeah, he did. And he
the
didn't
very,
eat
very end.
vegetables. He didn't eat fruit. He didn't drink or smoke, but he didn't drink water. He didn't do any of the things you're supposed to do. And he was still very healthy. So I don't know. That's just was a fluke, but he was a real joy right up until the end. So
Oh, how lucky.
and I didn't have to do my mother is another story that I don't even go into, but he was the healthiest person I've ever met. She was the most unhealthy person I ever met. But I just think this whole aging but dangerous, we just want to help women because it is a really big thing for them. The memory and everything. I mean, I just am really going to stay in touch with your website because you're
Yeah.
doing
Well, there's
so
a
many
there's a little
things.
banner at the top where people can sign up for email
Good.
updates. And so I usually email out a helpful article every other week. And then if I'm doing a workshop, an event, a thing,
Mhm,
then it gets announced to the list. So that's, might be a good
mhm.
option for you and
Yeah.
people who are interested. But I think it's, one needs to find this balance because on one hand, if you focus too much on your health and what might go wrong and the rest, that's a heavy weight. And we actually know that older adults, you know, can do worse if they're too focused on that.
Yeah.
And, you know, the reality is that the mind and body are more vulnerable. Many people at the age that you are dealing with chronic illnesses, conditions already, and that sort of finding sensible ways to optimize those, you know, and to make sure you're getting like taking care of them so they don't get worse faster than they need to, or recognizing when something's wrong and getting help promptly before it turns into a bigger problem. You know, that's helpful too. And so, you know, the reality is that a better health while aging and geriatrics for caregivers, I started off thinking about those people who had a parent who was really in bad shape and really needed the help. So some of the articles, you know, are there for people who are having problems, and we need to provide help and support to them in the family.
For sure.
But other things are more preventive. And so I just encourage, you know, we want to hope for the best. And we actually know that as people get older, that's another way that brains change, is older adults are better at focusing on the positive and on relationships and setting aside the negative stuff. And that is a wonderful strength, but also means that sometimes they don't plan ahead as much as maybe would have been ideal. And so I encourage people to hope for the best and still plan sensibly.
Yeah. And you know what my doctor says? 3 things as you're aging: own it, take care of it, and move on.
There we go.
Deal with it.
I like
and
it.
I love that. And I just always say to people all the time, our followers, if I sat down and concentrated on my age, that I'm 83 years old, if I thought about that all the time, I probably would get very depressed, like, oh my gosh, it's really old. But I don't even think about it because I never thought about it. I don't think about the age thing. But, you know, they so much mentally have to, you know, have such a positive attitude. But like you say too, that I really got so much out of what you talked about today, because we do have to acknowledge what's going on. You know, it's like we have to, like she said.
Yeah. And what I find in like the helping older parents programs, because we do I do live group coaching calls with people twice a month, and our care managers do, is, you know, a lot of those adult children are in there struggling to pick up the pieces because their parents did not plan for any of this. And so we don't want to, you can't plan out the entire future. Like a lot of this is about the fact that we can't control as much as we want to. But also not making any plans at all, you know, can mean that other people are there. You know, even plans just like starting to involve someone else, one of your children, if you have them, or somebody else in like your health a little bit, so that if ever you're unwell and they need to step in, they have a sense of that. You know, a lot of people have not even done that, right?
I think that sun is really getting to me. I think that is so important. It's just a great thing to end with, because we have an only child, and I think, oh my gosh, we have to really, I've been married to my husband for 60 years and we're both pretty healthy, but I just think, oh my gosh, we do have to make some plans. I don't want everything to fall on her shoulders.
Or just a talk like once a year or every, you know, 6 months, a little check-in, because at some point your child will probably have to step in at some point. Right. We're hoping not for another 20 years that you'll be like your dad. Right. But none of us know when it happens. And even, you know, for me, like somebody of any age can get knocked over by a car crossing the street. Right. You know, and I did actually make plans, you know, my husband and I, it's a total pain, but, you know, we do this whole like advanced planning process like every 10 years. And I had to make a plan for better health while aging, right? What would happen to better health while aging? If I were hurt. And you know,
do you have children?
Yeah, you know, and we like made plans for, you know, our children.
So I always say to people that don't want children, I'm like, wait a minute, you know, that child is going to be able to help you someday, maybe. I don't say that, but
if they don't want children, I think it's okay. But then you know, thinking about your nephews, nieces, cousins,
get a friend, somebody,
you know, who are you going to have relationships with? Because that is the sort of beautiful thing about people
Right,
is that we can't do it all on our own.
right,
And even when we're well, I think we're better off doing things with other people. And then, yes, we will each have moments when we
right,
are having difficulty. And it's very, very hard to get past that without the help and support of others.
right,
And
right.
especially when the going is tough, it's
Yeah,
often family who will
right,
especially do it.
right.
So,
Well, Dr. Leslie Kennison, thank you
okay.
so much.
Thank you, Jean.
You are a
And enjoy the
delight.
rest of your Martini Friday.
Yeah, but you are a delight, and I love it when I see young people going into areas like this because there are so many of us out there that are older, and I love that. So thank you for what you're doing.
Yes,
And
and thank you
and
for creating this age positive community of women.
yeah, and let's keep in
Really important.
touch.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks. Bye.